In this lesson, we're going to use the Silhouette Studio software to create a pie chart. I'm going to show you how to draw and create your own pie chart in the software, and then we're going to use different pattern papers just to add behind each section of the pie chart for a fun pattern paper look. So let's get started. So now we have our laptop and our Cameo, and we're ready to cut. We have the two connected, and so now we're ready to draw our pie chart. So what we want to do is we're going to use our circle tool. This is really easy. We're going to use the circle tool and probably our box tool. That makes it easier for me when I do the pie chart. So first we're going to start with the circle tool, so I'm just going to click on that and make sure I have it selected. I want to have a large pie chart, so I'm going to do this about probably 10 inches. So I'm just going to draw my circle here, and I'm going to use my measurements, and it's telling me that I'm close to 10, so I'm about 10 inches here. So now what I want to do is I want to have a double circle, so I'm just going to copy this circle really quick and go to Edit and Copy, and then we're just going to paste it. Now I want this one a little bit smaller to fit in, and it's going to give us a circle outline shape. So I'm just going to size it down a bit. And I'll move it just to get the settings and the width that I want. And that's a little skinny, so I'm just going to shrink it down just a little bit more and then move it and get it centered up so we have that outline circle. So now we have this. So what we want to do before we start adding our lines is we want to highlight over the whole circle, two circles together, and we're going to go to Object, and we want to make these a compound path. So we're going to tell it to make compound path. So now that we have that, we can go in and start adding our lines for the pie chart. So I like to use the little box tool or rectangle tool, so I'm going to click on that, and I'm just going to draw kind of about the same width as what my circle is as far as the circle outline shape, and so I'm just going to draw it to where it's overlapping a little bit. And I want to get it lined up in the center right here, and you just want to make sure, like I said, that those are kind of overlapping because we're going to weld this together in just a bit to give us that pie chart look. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and click on that rectangle tool again, and I'm just going to draw another rectangle shape. I'm just going to bring it down this way, and then I'm going to rotate it. So I'm going to click on my arrow here, and when I click back, you'll see I get this little green circle here on the shape. So I can use that to rotate and spin my shape any way that I want to. So you can use this to kind of get those triangle shaped pieces the different widths that you want them, because you want to have the different sizes in that pie chart look. So I'm going to make sure that it overlaps there to the center, and I need it to go a little further. It's not quite long enough, so I'm going to stretch it out just a bit and make it just a little bit skinnier here. And so now I have this one. I can actually copy this one and just kind of move it around and use it in the other spaces, and I'm going to get it just a little bit wider right there. So now I'm just going to copy this one and use it and rotate it to get it to the spots that I want it. So I'm going to copy and paste, and then I can move it down and just rotate back to that center part right there. And you can see that's creating my triangle shapes for my pie chart. And you want to make sure that it overlaps, because when you use the weld feature, it's going to weld all these pieces together. And so I'm just going to, since I already have this copied, I can just paste it again. It's going to paste that same shape, and I'll move it over here. And I think I want the triangles on this side of the pie chart to be a lot thicker, so I'm just going to add that right there. And you can see now how I have those different sections of the pie chart. So now that we have all of our lines, what we want to do is just highlight over the whole shape, all the shapes together, and make sure those are all selected. And then we want to go to the Modify window, and once that comes up, we're going to click Weld. So now you can see that we have a pie chart shape, and all of the pieces are together. So when this cuts, you're going to have your pie chart, and you're going to have these open spaces where you can add in different pattern papers. So now we're ready to send this to our machine. So I'm going to add some white cardstock because I want this cut from white cardstock, just to have those pattern papers contrast behind the cardstock paper. So we're going to add that to our mat. And then we want to do load cut. Well, we want to put our mat in first. So you can see that I always, have a little problem here and there too. I'm never perfect when I'm putting my layouts together. So now we want to do unload because that already has it loaded in. So now we want to put it in and do load cut mat. And since we are doing cardstock, we want to make sure that our blade is set to 5 because that's going to be the setting for our textured cardstock. And you can see it's 3 right now, so we just want to change that to the 5 depth setting. So So now that we have that, we'll go in and we'll change that setting on our cut settings also. So we want to do cut settings, and we want to choose textured cardstock. And now we're ready to send to our machine. So now we have our pie chart off of the silhouette mat. So what I want to do is I'm going to add some pattern papers, and you can see here I'm using a pattern paper background. It's not a really busy background just because it has the stripes. It's a little more subtle just because it has the white and the yellow. So you can layer some other pattern papers without it looking too overwhelming. So what I'm going to do is, you can see I just have some different pattern papers here, and I'm just going to kind of put my pie chart shape over this. And I like to usually line it up along an edge, if I have one, a straight edge. And I'm just going to kind of cut a little corner off right here, just to have a little smaller section to work with. So now you can see that that's kind of lined up right there, and that's how I want it. So I'm just going to use the scissors to go in and trim off this excess piece right here, and then around on the outside edge. And if you wanted to, you could actually adhere this first and then kind of cut around those edges. But I usually like to do it this way, because that way if I need to cut in a little bit, just so that that edge doesn't stick out. And so now we have that one in our spot. So I'm just going to flip it over. I'm going to take my adhesive roller and just add some adhesive back here on the back side of the pie chart. And I'm going to go around each of those sides. And then I can go back and add my paper here. And it's going to fit right there in that spot, since we cut it to go in that triangle shape. So you can see how that looks. And we'll just do one more real quick of the bigger sections. And just grab a different pattern paper. And I like this because you can add a different paper in each section if you want to, just to have a variety of pattern papers. So I'm going to do that same thing. I'm just going to kind of line up along this edge here, and just kind of cut it down a little bit smaller, just so you're not working with such a big piece of paper. And then you can kind of get it lined back up before you start cutting. And then you can just go in. And as you go along, you're going to fill in these spaces, so you can kind of overlap a little bit if you want to, and not be so careful about cutting the edges, just to get those spaces filled in. So I'm going to trim this little bit off right here. That's inside the center. And then we're going to go back and add our adhesive. Just go down all of those sides. And then we can just add this back in right here. And make sure that we don't have any of the edges showing on the outside of the circle. So you just keep repeating that process. And once I had all of the spaces filled, I just add it to my background paper. And then I have a photo that I kind of place over to the side. You could place your photo in the middle of the pie chart if you wanted to. I like to kind of have it offset so that I can add different embellishments. And since you're working with a circle design, it's kind of fun to add a lot of embellishing around this. So I used some thickers and just kind of created like just some fun titles around the layout. And since these are foam thickers, they're really easy to kind of to bend along the shape if you want to do that, to follow the circle shape. So you can kind of bend those a little bit if you want to. And I did hello today on my layout. So I'm just going to get this up. And then you can see how you can just kind of bend that and stretch it. So it just goes around your pie chart shape, just like that. And you can see on my finished layout, I used several other phrases from the thickers and repeated that same process of curving the thickers here at the top. And then I used the circle shape to just go in and add some embellishing around the pie chart. And these are really fun. You could do different sizes with your pie chart. You could use the big size. You could also make it a little smaller just to do different designs and just mix things up on your layouts.